Okay, guys, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some connectors, some jumpers, some useful things that you could, use in your journey of amateur radio. Just things that make life a little easier, you know. A lot of good stuff to have in your junk box or your junk drawer, you know. I would also recommend getting a good solder station, you know, a good soldering iron. Uh, Things like that. If you're going to start tinkering and building and making your own antennas and stuff like that, that kind of goes along with it. Anyway, I want to show you some of the basics. So we got some. One thing good to have is a wire cutter. Wire cutter is good to have because you're always going to be needing that when you're playing around with coax, cable, hacksaw, depending on the kind of coax you're using. If you're using, the LMR stuff or the heliax where you need to cut through it with a saw. A little stripper strips the coax, and this will strip. The smaller one will strip back the dielectric, leaving the center conductor open. And let's see, show you a couple basics. This is just a little jumper. Say that goes from the back of your radio to a meter, you know. And on the end, you want to get famous with the names of these connectors because it comes in handy later on down the line. We have a PL259 on each end. Okay, just notice the way they look. Okay, same thing. Looks a little different, but same thing. Two PL259s, little jumper, going say from a radio to a meter, from a meter to an amplifier, and so forth. Same thing, a little bit in a larger form where you could actually run this. It's got two PL259s on each end, and it's a good run, maybe 20-25 feet. So you could probably use this for a mobile run. If you have a base a mag mount antenna, you could screw one side into the mag mount antenna, screw one side into the radio. If you're using say a dual band radio or a HF radio and you just want to get hooked up real quick into the car. Now these two pieces of Superflex or Heliax, more commercial grade, they're more rigid, so you bend them, and they kind of stay in the shape you bend them in. Anyway, they're more professional stuff, but you'll come across this stuff, so it's good to have. These are end connectors. They have end connectors. They're usually used, say you have a 2-meter 440 rig, in maybe it's a 100-watt radio. On the back of those radios, there's an SO239 connector, which looks like this. And then there's an end connector, which that's what you would plug something like this into. So these two little jumpers I use all the time for different things. I have a UHF 25 element beam that I use occasionally portably. And that comes in handy for things like that, for like little jumpers to stuff. So let me get some of these bigger chunks of coax out of the way here. So on this particular piece of heliax that we have here, one end has a end connector male on it. It's an end connector male, and it goes to the other end, and the other end actually has a this is an adapter here, so I'm going to take that adapter off, and you know what, Okay, I'll pull the adapter off. So on the one end of this heliax is an N connector, and on the other end is a B and C connector. But obviously, I wanted to use this for something. I can't remember what, but so I got myself an adapter, which is an N connector to a B and C female. So here's your B and C male connector, and all I do is screw that in and turn it to the right till it clicks. Now I have two N connectors on the end of the coax. You know, I don't recommend using adapters. They're not really the smartest way to go. It's best to just use a connector from point A to point B. But in a pinch, adapters work, you know. And if that's all you got going for you, I mean, use it, you know. So here we have a little conglomeration of stuff I made to get a radio to actually work. I got a couple of these here I want to show you. And here's another jumper. Here's another jumper, small jumper, heavy duty, with two end connectors on it. Two end connectors. So, see that? Now this little connector here, right? I got several different adapters connected to these things because I had to configure something out because I just didn't have a random fix for this. So I'm going to show you real quick what I did this for. So I have my Connect Systems radio. It's a DMR. It's an analog and a DMR handheld. Connect Systems 580. So when I unscrew the antenna, inside there is a male SMA connector, you know, whereas some of them have a female SMA connector. I'm losing the antenna now. Everything's falling on the floor, and when I'm done with it, I'm throwing it on the floor, so I have to clean the floor in a little bit. Anyway, so here we have that male SMA connector, right? So I didn't have a quick fix to this to hook this up to a base antenna. So what I did is I put a conglomeration of adapters together, and the final outcome was SMA female connector, all right? So I could take that SMA female connector and see if I can screw it into the radio itself, okay? Screw it into the radio itself. Okay. And then I'll go through the adapters I used. So I have it screwed into the radio itself, right? Now I could use this through my, I have a Diamond X50 that I'm using for a small base antenna. It's only 4 feet. So I have the connection here. Connections here. And on the end of that adapter, I have an SO239 connector, you know, along with a conglomeration of other adapters to get to that. So my SO239 connector will fit perfect when I plug my antenna connector into it, which is a PL259. Screws into it. Tighten it up, make sure everything's tight. I'll turn my Connect Systems on. Now I'm going through my base antenna. Turn my Connect Systems on.
4, 1.
Okay, and I'll tap the mic. Keying up repeaters. So that's an analog repeater. It's a digital repeater. I'm getting into everything.
3.
It's another digital repeater.
4.
That's the 3100 group. Getting into that.
5.
That's another digital group. And you can see it's keying up because on the top left there's an antenna. You see an antenna and you see the signal of the antenna. This is a local Montclair repeater. I'll just tap this. See the antenna on the top left? So I'm using my base antenna now.
7.
That's another machine. This is actually a GMRS frequency. I don't use this. I just put it in there, but I could tap that and key it up.
9.
This is in Wayne, New Jersey, 442000. Just tap it. Key it up. Everything's being keyed up from this thing. My friend Andy's repeater, KC2GOW. Tap it. That's it. That's in Staten Island. So my base
11.
antenna is just in a little null for that. That's why it's not coming in that good. I just would have to move it a little bit. That's the W2NJR system.
12.
That's the Alpine, New Jersey repeater.
13.
That's another digital machine.
14.
That's another machine. I think it's in
15.
Brooklyn. 446000.
16.
A 444 frequency for DMR. Okay, so enough of that. I went through everything here with that. So now I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of, how I put this thing together. Adapter-wise, I mean, obviously I overdid it when it came to using adapters, but it was the only way I could get this little HT connected because of the different configurations of the adapter. So since the input here on the radio is a male SMA, I needed a female SMA. Okay, so I had a double-sided female SMA connector, double-sided. Okay, which is not going to do me any good. So on this double-sided female SMA connector, I had an SMA male that would plug into the female, and on the flip side, I had a BNC female that would plug into the BNC male that I actually had on this little jumper here. So I plugged the BNC male in, plugged the female SMA double-sided connector, and there you had it. That went into the radio. Now to go into the coax, which is a PL259 on the end of the coax, we had to go into a SO239. So on this SO239, I have a barrel connector, which is two SO239s on each side, okay? Now, with a PL259 on this side, and this also is an adapter, but when I unscrew this in adapter, it's a female end connector adapter. So here we have on the end of this little jumper, it's an end connector. So in order to make this work, I have a male end connector on the end of this piece of jumper. So I have a female end connector. They fit together. And then I have the double-sided SO239 barrel connector that fits together. And that's how I made my jumper, so I could take my HT and plug it into my external antenna, my base antenna, so I can get more range on it, okay? And here's a few homemade little things I used for like microwave stuff in the past. So this is microwave hardline here, and I just made little short adapter runs of an end connector with the little microwave hardline here, probably about a half an inch, to a male SMA connector. I made the identical one with a little longer of the hardline SMA connector, end connector, and I made a couple of these. Hardline here, microwave hardline with two SMA connectors on each end. SMA connector on each end. Okay, and I made a smaller one. So, you know, if you're using things like an oscilloscope or any kind of test equipment or a power divider, this is a power divider. We're really not going to get into this kind of stuff today. But anyway, for the sake of showing you some of those connectors I made, I'll just screw a couple of them into the power divider, so you can kind of see the use or the purpose of why I would be making little things like that. So here's two of the connectors that I just showed you screwed into the power divider. I screw another one into the bottom side. Now the power divider has three SMA female connectors. So on the bottom, on the input here, I have an SMA connector with an end connector. Actually an end connector right there. So there you have it, those little connections I made just in case I needed them. Another little connector, end connector, SMA connector. And let's see, I did want to show you a couple more things. I did want to show you a few more things here. I'm not going to go through all of these, so, you know, but I'm going to show you it's very handy to have a bunch of different kind of adapters, because you just never know what you're going to need, okay? So I'll give you a run through of a couple of these adapters, right? Okay. So here's a T-type looking adapter that has two SO239s on each side and a PL259, you know, in the center here of the T. So, and I'll put the ones I'm using off to the side. Here we have an end connector male, with a female end connector on the flip side. Okay. We have a PL259, regular PL259 connector, with a BNC female connector. We have an elbow mount here with a PL259 to an SO239. If you screwed this into the back of your radio and you happen to have a little antenna you wanted to receive from that had a PL259, you would screw it into the top of that. Now, when you start getting into building things and things like that, you have a chassis mount connectors. This is a chassis mount connector. It's an N connector, an N chassis mount connector. I have several of those here. And, yeah, several of those, so I'll put those off to the side. And now here, if you wanted to build something for a chassis mount with an SO239 connector, you would use this. So your regular piece of coax would fit into it. Say if you built yourself a homemade SWR meter or whatever it is, phase meter, whatever it is, and you put this into a little fixture, you would have to connect the coax to it somehow, and this would be your means of connecting it. Now here we have a double-sided PL259 connector. A double-sided. Just giving you a brief rundown. Another barrel connector. Two SO239 connector. If you need to put a coax into here, if you need to put a coax into that end to extend it or whatever you need to do, that comes in handy. And a lot of people have handy talkies, and what they do is sometimes they'll use these type of connectors. If the top of the handy talkie has a BNC female connector to it, these have male BNC connectors, and on the opposite end, SO239, so you can actually, screw coax or a base antenna into it. So that could be helpful also. So, and there's a bunch more, but I'm not going to go through all of these because some of these are a little probably you might not be needing right away unless you're building stuff or things like that. Like for instance, this BNC connector that would screw into a box, in case you were building something like some kind of meter or some kind of piece of test equipment. So anyway, that's it. That's just wanted to give you a quick rundown of some of the connectors and how important it is to have them in your junk box, especially when you start advancing with the hobby of amateur radio, because you don't want to always be picking up the phone or sending out orders when you have stuff readily available in your junk box.